Good morning, afternoon, or evening from wherever you are joining us from today. Welcome to our next webinar in the Future Change series, formerly named the Regenerative Agriculture series. I'm very pleased to introduce Syngenta as the host of this webinar. Welcome, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us. At the Future Change Summit earlier this year, the conversation shifted towards supply chain resilience and the role regenerative agriculture can play in supporting long-term security of supply. Today's webinar will build on that discussion, looking at how digital tools and farm data can create value on the farm while also helping supply chains better understand and support what is happening on the ground. Before I hand over to our panel, I just want to outline a few housekeeping items for you. Firstly, to the right of your screen are multiple tools you can use to interact with the session. If you are unable to see the engagement tab, you can click the arrows to expand. From here, you will see the audience, chat, and polls. Secondly, please feel free to ask questions to our panel throughout the session via the Q&A function. And lastly, a recording of the webinar will be available to view on demand from tomorrow, and you will receive an email with a link to do so. So without any further delay, I will now hand over to Manpriet Singh, our moderator, to begin the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Helen. I would first of all like to welcome our expert panelists here. So we have Bill McDonnell. Bill farms 1,000 acres of soy and corn in northern Illinois in the US and is also digital solutions lead at Syngenta, managing the 150-acre farm of the future. Welcome, Bill. We have with us Spencer Karabellas. He's joining from United Sugar. He's Director of Sustainability. Welcome, Spencer. And then we have Annah Latané, who is Digital Product Manager at Syngenta. It's great to have you here, Anna, with us. It's a pleasure to have this conversation with all three of you. Now, I lead Value Chain Alliances at Syngenta, and I come from a farming family. Actually, my family farms in the state of Punjab, back in India. They farm in the so-called Doaba region. Now, Doaba means the land between two rivers, but ironically, and it's very concerning, water is Punjab's greatest crisis at the moment. So while growing up, I've seen farming decisions made by trusting what generations before did, and there was no or very little use of farm data to support decision making, and decisions were rather based on instinct, or there was some advice from an agricultural university from time to time. So my family actually took a great risk while they were farming, and we weren't always sure about our income. So fast forward to today, there has been an enormous growth in the collection of farm data and its use, including the development of digital farming tools. And this is not only a story from large farms. Digital tools are an collection of farm data. It's also increasingly happening on the smaller farms, smaller farming businesses. Also back in Punjab, they are increasingly using these tools, such as smart irrigation systems, very much needed. But farmers are also increasingly interested in variable rate application. That also has to do with the economics side, of course. At the RegenAg Summit in London earlier this year, much of the conversation around the collection of farm data and its use focused on the needs of the supply chain. And today, together with our panelists, we'd like to build forward on that conversation. Now, farmers collect data during their everyday farming operations, and they use digital tools. And these tools and data, they first of all return value back to the farmer. And then through insights, this is supporting also their decision-making through these data insights. Also, there is the data feedback loop, and their value is also added to farmers over time. So the data feedback loop into the digital tools that they're using. It's helping them improve farm management, refine practices, build in more efficiencies, and so forth. So digital tools that are really valuable to farmers could actually also be used and designed to collect data that meet the needs of the supply chains. For example, and as was discussed in London, to report on RegenAg practices, or where possible also on RegenAg outcomes. So that is a conversation, one of the topics that we would like to talk about today. So farm data collection and digital tools are advancing fast enough. So having the supply chain, having farmers benefit from this data, it's not just an idea, it's a design choice. So having that in mind, let me first go to our experts here to get to know them better. So could you tell us about yourself and your work and how you interact with farm data and with digital tools? And perhaps, Bill, you could kick us off.
Yeah, thanks, Manpreet. So as Manpreet said, I'm Bill McDonnell, and I'm located in North Central Illinois. I'm a fifth generation farmer, and we farm about 1,000 acres of corn and soybeans. In addition to that, I'm also the digital solutions lead at Syngenta, where I run a project called Farm of the Future, and we test anything that falls under the precision ag or technology umbrella. So that might be hardware with actual in-field sensors. It might be gathering data to build crop models off of. Really, really all-encompassing type work in the precision ag space. And then I've also consulted with farmers on how to integrate technology into their operations, and really, farm data is almost a day-to-day thing for me. We collect it ourselves. I work with it both for my work at Syngenta and with other farmers, and it's almost become, to work with farm data for me is as common as most people having a cell phone in their pocket at this point. So it's really, really in depth. Oh, you're on mute, Manpreet.
Moving on to Spencer. Thank you, Bill.
Hello, everyone. I'm Spencer Karabellas, Director of Sustainability for United Sugar Producers and Refiners. We are a collective of cooperatives across the United States that farm and manufacture sugar for delivery to thousands of customers across the United States. In my work, I kind of sit at the midpoint of our farmer cooperative members and customers. Farmers use data every day to make decisions, to understand the health of their crop, to understand what challenges may be coming in the future, and rely more so on data than ever before to make those decisions, especially as we see a trend towards the adoption of mass technology and a real challenge in terms of getting people or the amount of hands that needed in the field at certain times, especially with specialist agriculturalist skills. So relying on data and relying on technology has become a huge part of farming for every farmer. And being able to rely on that data is super important. So my support really comes in figuring out what tools and services are best crafted to help our farmers both make decisions on field, but also collect data to make verifications about the sustainable practices and their outcomes in field. And I also work to translate some of the global systems that are coming from global management bodies like the Greenhouse Gas Protocol and others, and try to transform some of these global targets and challenges into meaningful action across our cooperative in a way that protects our farmers and their ability to continue farming for generations to come.
Thanks a lot, Spencer, to bring in that perspective. Now moving on to Anna.
Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here. I am a digital product manager with the Cropwise ecosystem here at Syngenta, along with about 700 of my colleagues, designing digital tools to support farmers on the ground across all points of their decision-making through the season. I come from a farming family myself here on the East Coast of the United States, and I work specifically on Cropwise Sustainability, which touches especially on that last point that Spencer noted around helping farmers tell their sustainability story behind the practices that they're doing on farm in a way that is simple and impactful and captures both their mindsets as well as their practices. The Cropwise ecosystem is a wide ecosystem that connects a lot of decision support, a lot of different agronomic models, and we'll touch on pieces of that as we go here.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks all three so much to bring in your different perspective. You are sitting at different places in the supply chain, so that will make this conversation very interesting. Before moving on, I would like to launch a poll, please, Amy. And it should just pop up. Yes, there it is. So it should be, yeah. All right. So the poll is, how would you describe your current engagement with farm data? And please share your inputs. Okay, great. Thanks a lot. So there's also about 40% that is not currently engaged in collecting farm data, or even more. And a good part of the cloud is collecting farm data already. And about 20% is sharing this data as well upstream and downstream the value chain. So we have a mixed crowd here, so that will make for a nice conversation later on. Please pop in your questions as we continue talking about collecting farm data and using it. So we heard our panelists are all engaged in collecting and using farm data, like I said, at different places in the supply chain. So let's dig a little bit deeper into that. So Bill, you told us that you test digital tools on your farm and also on the farm of the future. Can you share an example where the use of digital tools really made a difference on how you farm?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's quite a few examples. So, you know, when I started farming professionally about 20 years ago, we just got to where the technology was starting to come to the forefront. So the first technology we implemented was auto steer guidance technology, and made a huge difference in fuel savings and efficiency of operations, and, you know, just operator fatigue. And from there, then we really look towards, you know, things like soil sampling and how we manage the nutrients on our farm. So we shifted pretty heavily towards variable rate application. So we would take soil tests, we would take yield data to build management zones off of, to say we need exactly this much fertilizer in this part of the field, and would apply it that way. As we look towards the current time period, we're starting to look at technology like optical spot spraying technology. So you're seeing spray from John Deere. There's other companies out there as well, so that we can really concentrate on how do we save pesticide usage, and that way we can only apply pesticides where we really need them. So spraying just the weeds, not the entire field. And then, you know, we look at on-field trials around nitrogen use efficiency, fungicide usage, all of those kind of things as well. And then some of the even more fun stories to tell are where technology failed, right? So there's a lot of failures on that front too. So we tend to look at you know, in-field sensors, especially in my part of the world, tend to not bring a lot of value, mainly because we aren't irrigated. So when we, you know, in irrigated areas, farmers use soil moisture probes to really fine tune that irrigation. We've looked at those and haven't had great success with them because we're really not in control of the moisture here. We've also looked at sensors to monitor, you know, nitrogen and other nutrients, and have had a lot of issues with them in the field, with not only with getting good data, but getting connectivity through, you know, a corn canopy that might be 7, 8, 10 feet tall. So really, from, you know, over the last 20 years, we've made a pretty good evolution on our farm, from starting with, you know, what would be commonplace technology today, to getting to where we manage, you know, every acre or even sub-acre of that field independently of its neighbor.
Thank you, Bill. That is super interesting. So it did take some time to test these technologies on your farm, see which farm data is most valuable for you to connect in your specific farming setup, to then move forward and scale this indeed on your farm. The journey of all farmers in different parts of the world will be different in this regard. So it's also really nice to have something like the Farm of the Future, I believe, where other farmers could also come and see what is working and what not in that specific environment. So yeah, thanks very much for sharing that. Anna, I'd like to move to you. Can you tell us about Cropwise, and how does Cropwise work both for farmers and for the supply chain?
Sure thing. The easiest way that I think about Cropwise is a family of a connected ecosystem of apps that work together to really support farm management, pest and disease monitoring, precision farming, and sustainability all together within the same set of connected services. We know that, as Bill mentioned, farmers are moving towards more of a precision managed to the acre, to the sub-acre level, and our digital services are meant to support that decision making as they move across the course of a season. Some of them are designed specifically for spraying, so better guidance about when and where, and any restrictions that they may encounter in their geographies. Some are really honing in on that disease and pest and risk monitoring, especially where there's operations that have a lot of field force there monitoring those crops throughout the season. And then an app like Cropwise Sustainability zooms out a little bit more, and is meant to capture across the farm from a whole farm perspective. What are they implementing year by year to demonstrate continuous improvement in a way that's benchmarked to global standards like the SCI/FSA standard, and provide that data up to our partners from a value chain perspective so that they have a better understanding not only of things like water efficiency or nitrogen use efficiency or yields, but also how deeply connected are their growers in with soil science initiatives and adopting new practices around cover cropping or whatever it might be that's relevant to their particular geographies.
Thanks a lot, Anna. Could I ask a quick follow-up question on that? So as farmers are using some of the Cropwise applications there to collect their farm data to support all these insights that you just shared, and then there's also supply chain partners that are involved in that. Could you tell us a little bit about the data that the farmer is collecting, and how is that aggregated? Does that work at the program level? How does that come through? And the farmer at the end will own their own individual data. Could you explain that a little bit more?
Sure. Our Cropwise ecosystem takes the position in our security protocols, and all of it are sort of built around the idea that growers own their own data. And so when they choose to share their permissions that are in place to be able to share those with partners, maybe their partner is a retailer, maybe their partner is a United Sugars. Maybe their partner is an agronomist, an independent agronomist that they work closely with to make decisions on farm. So that's sort of a foundational piece that we all build from. We have connected account systems across our ecosystem. And as we mature from a ecosystem or platform perspective, we continue to aggregate that data, especially using AI to help us better connect disparate data sets, whether it might be more record keeping around spraying events, or agronomic models that are predicting yield or disease risk. So as we continue to build our platform out, we're finding new opportunities to connect those data sets together in ways that provide deeper insight, support that grower to make deeper decision making, but also to increasingly work with these supply chain partners who might be trying to understand risk and resilience at a more regional level in a way that they haven't before.
Thank you. Thanks, Anna. Moving on to you, Spencer. What data do you currently collect with your farmers? For what purposes? And how does that collected data benefit the farmers? And in this case, the supply chain, so United Sugar and all the partners that you work with.
Absolutely. So farmers have been collecting data for everything related to their crop for a long time. And as it turns out, much of that data is necessary when you're trying to calculate things like greenhouse gas emissions and soil health and other aspects. Farmers have always looked at things like nitrogen use efficiency, the performance of different varieties in the field when it comes to water use, drought resilience, crop product use. So in a lot of ways, the goal of the farmer has always been to reduce impacts and be more efficient. And so a lot of it is trying to translate those agronomic data points into sustainability data points and keep them so similar and try to tie them together in a way where they're self-supporting. When we start to collect data for farmers, I think most people who have done greenhouse gas for farms know that nitrogen use, especially in field, is one of the leading use or drivers of greenhouse gas in field. So as farmers have always continuously focused on nitrogen use efficiency, their greenhouse gas has continuously gone down. But I think in today's day and age, just focusing on greenhouse gas, I think, is the biggest shift that I'm seeing in the market right now, where companies would put forward programs and collect data for things that support greenhouse gas, which focused on a very small subset of the data that farmers collect. And now, as we shift towards more regenerative agriculture, focusing on all the practices coming together and their combined outputs and impacts, you start to collect a much wider variety of data that's more holistic to the farm system as a whole. And so we've gone beyond just collecting data on nitrogen use efficiency and, fuel use and stuff like that. And now we're starting to look at, soil health metrics from more of a Haney test perspective for our entire farm group, as opposed to doing smaller samples to try to get a, scalable understanding of where we're at. Really trying to understand the connection between cover crops and diversity of crops and how that impacts individual soil types within our growing regions has become more of a focus. So really, as we continue to shift our perspective from what we look for from farm data, it does unlock new areas of opportunity for farmers to be more holistic about all of the practices that they do, gain more value for those practices, and help us, verify that outcome through the entire supply chain.
Brilliant. So just tying up a little bit of what I heard here and what Bill shared and what you're sharing now, Spencer, as well, and Anna, it takes time. It's a journey. We don't have it right at the very beginning. As farm data comes in, as we test different digital tools on the farm, we see one data point and more data points, as you mentioned, Spencer, a holistic view, which can also perhaps build in more efficiencies for the farm and create other success cases. So it takes time, right? So Spencer, may I ask a follow-up question there? Are you like part of a community? Do you share this information as well with perhaps other organizations in the area where you're working who are looking into the same aspect to move faster?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say there's, traditional systems that we've always been a part of, local research, university and college research, government funded programs and research. Those traditional aspects we've always tried to be as engaged in as possible, and has led to a lot of great collaboration, a lot of great learnings. And the best thing about using local resources is that they really do understand the farmer perspective, this local soil conditions, the local climate conditions. And so, prescriptions can be very tailored in that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, as we continue to grow, I think the biggest thing is connecting the entire value chain. So we've had farmers and we've had research and we've had customers. And I think, some people who are in leadership positions who understood sustainability earlier would have built these programs earlier and tried to connect with farmers earlier. Now we're in a position where everybody in the supply chain is trying to understand their supply, both from a sustainability perspective, but also from a supply security perspective and, climate change risk and all of these things. So, as we continue, the biggest focus is on trying to build larger partnerships that include the entire value chain while still allowing the grower to have a very equitable seat at the table and really be the driver of what is possible and what support they need.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more with that, Spencer. Thank you. Let's move on to the next stage in our conversation, talking about farm level reality, about RegenAg pilots and moving towards scale. So we've discussed a few examples here about farm data and digital farming tools and how that can change farming and benefit farmers, and how supply chain uses that data. So RegenAg has gained a lot of momentum in the past 4 or 5 years that at least I am connected to this piece of work in the industry, but a lot of the programs are still in their pilot phases. So what happens when that pilot ends for a farmer? If it was successful on 5 hectares, how could a farmer scale it to 50 hectares or 100 hectares? And for a supply chain company, how could it be scaled from 10 farms to 100 farms? Transitioning costs time, as we discussed, it costs money, and the returns are not immediately visible. It takes some time to see the benefits and see if these practices are actually really working in that specific farming context as well. And farmers carry most of that risk in that transition. So the question I want to talk with you about is whether farm data and digital farming tools, whether they can help farmers through that transition. Can they support them implement RegenAg practices, and can they help them to achieve scale perhaps quicker? And if so, how exactly will that work? How does that look like? So I'm moving back to Bill. You've been implementing RegenAg practices on your farm. What has that experience, Bill, taught you? And what does it take to scale these practices to your full farm operation, so those 1,000 acres on a McDonnell farm?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing we have to think about it is why farmers don't necessarily just jump right into RegenAg practices. And we've really got to think farmers farm the way they do because they're successful at it, right? So change can really take time. Actually, Manpreet, I think we're getting a little interference with our audio. If you could mute. Thank you. Much better. Much better. So change really takes time, and there's a lot of generational knowledge that gets passed down from one farmer to the next as to how to operate that farm. So when we look at my personal farm here, I vaguely remember how to run a moldboard plow. It was really on the way out, but I spent most of my career in full width tillage to date, and I know that system really well. So as we transition to strip till and now to cover crops, that's a whole new learning process for me. And really, when I think about it, the next generation will vaguely remember how to do full width tillage, and this will be more of the way they do it. So when we transitioned to strip till about, I want to say we started about 4 years ago with it, just starting to dabble, I had a neighbor ask me, well, how much better do you expect your crops to be with strip till? And my honest answer was, well, I actually expect them to be worse at first. And that becomes because I'm learning a whole new system and I don't know what I don't know right now. And that is a huge challenge for farmers, because if you look at, say a manufacturing somewhere in a factory, whatever the item is, you can implement a change and get pretty immediate feedback. But in farming, it's, a whole year until we get feedback. Did it work? And then with weather variability, it's 3, 4, 5 years to see, does it actually work in the long term? And then you compound that with soil health changes. So we like to say, if as you're moving towards RegenAg practices, it might take 5 to 10 years to really see those soil health changes. And you have to think about how long has that soil been in full width tillage versus how long have we been implementing regen practices, and we can't really expect to see a change immediately. So that becomes a challenge. I know for our own farming operation, we've probably started looking at a practice like strip till for I would say almost 10 years, learning. There wasn't a lot of resources out, especially in the early stages of RegenAg, trying to talk to other farmers, other industry people at trade shows. And then the biggest challenge is you can't just try it. It's pretty much we have to buy this equipment to go ahead and try it and see. And that's a huge capital investment as well. So we look at all of those things together, and it really makes it a challenge. So when you look at farm data to implement this, localized data from neighboring farms or like regions of how they went through the process, is it documented, what worked well, what doesn't work well, and are there key indicators we can look at from a soil health standpoint to say we're moving in the correct direction, even though maybe we don't see it yet. And I think those are all really key in making that transition. And I'm going to attempt to share my screen here, if I can do this correctly, and show a few images from some of the things we do on our farm from a RegenAg standpoint. So this is actually our strip till setup here today, and earlier you heard me talk about variable rate fertilizer. So you can see the two white tanks on the strip till bar. Those would have phosphorus and potassium fertilizer in them. So not only do we move towards variable rating that and getting the exact amount of fertilizer exactly where we need it, but now with strip till, we're also banding that below root depth of our future corn or soybean plant to put it, the right rate, but also the right placement. So we're really trying to dial in exactly where that fertilizer is so that the plant can make best use of it. And then hopefully that will allow us to, I don't want to say cut rates, but to use less overall fertilizer. And that's something we collect data on all the time and look at yield data versus fertilizer applied and see, are we getting a return on investment from that? So when you look at what we're leaving behind that strip till bar, we're leaving a lot of residue on the soil surface. So we're making approximately an 8 to 10 inch wide band of tilled soil. And then we've got a 20 to 22 inch band of untilled soil in between. And we've seen advantages of this, not only from soil health and overall, it's kind of hard to explain, but how well the soil holds up in different weather scenarios. But since we've been strip tilling for 4 years now, this was the first year I really noticed this spring when I was planting and I'm out digging behind the planter, the amount of earthworms we're seeing now comparatively to what we were seeing before. It's a huge visual and not something that necessarily we have a data point on, but really observationally something we can see there. And then finally, the last picture I have here is our transition into cover crops. And cover crops are one that has been a slower transition for us. It's a little bit harder to see where the return on investment is. So that's something that we're really looking at soil data to try to be the guide as to, are we moving in the correct direction and doing it on a somewhat smaller scale, not a full operation, and see what kind of benefits we can get. So that's just a really general overview of what our transition has looked like and how we're using data to help with that.
Thank you, Bill. That's really insightful. It's always great to be on a farm, but it's great that you could share these pictures as well, so we could visualize that we're on the farm. Just want to move to Spencer. Spencer, you work with your growers. There are probably many growers that you're collaborating with. So What are their experiences when adopting RegenAg practices? What works well, and where do they tell you that they see challenges?
Absolutely. So across our co-op, there's probably over 3,500 farm families with multiple units encapsulated within. They have multiple fields across mostly the Red River Valley and Florida. And even within these smaller specific geographies, things like soil type, localized climate, access to products and services are all very different. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges of trying to take what works on a farm and scale it across even a group of like-minded farmers, is that individual practices may not work as well in one system as they do in another. And different crops within the rotation may offer unique challenges to overcoming the challenges of regenerative agriculture. With sugar beet, for example, it grows in the soil. You need to physically remove the beet from the soil to harvest it. So in a lot of ways, that soil disturbance is something that is unavoidable. You can minimize it. You can minimize disturbance within the rest of the rotation to make up for it. And there's a lot of different avenues to take. But I think the biggest challenge is really just trying to figure out a individualized action plan with farmers. Many farmers know exactly what they need to do and have run into financial or technologically support, lack of technological support, or other things that are more logistics challenges in the field. But I also think there's just a challenge in terms of, as Bill mentioned, it's hard to take a big risk like switching tillage equipment, which could be $1 million capital investment for a farm. There have been farmers that have swapped from traditional tillage to strip tillage, and then have swapped, from strip tillage to not back to traditional, but back to other, mixed forms of tillage because it left too much green in the field, or they don't irrigate, so moisture control is very challenging. So I think the bottom line is really that, when you start to look holistically at the system, one decision will have trade-offs within other parts of the system. So that's the good thing about looking holistically, is you can see and understand where those trade-offs are happening, and using digital tools makes that a lot easier. There are things that you can't readily quantify, but that you might be able to use digital tools to help you understand, what you're seeing and understand what that means in terms of impact on the field. And I think that, as we continue on this journey, digital tools will be, in a lot of ways, one of the most important parts of this transition, because when you do things in field, you won't immediately see the impact in a lot of ways. It's about, trying to model what that impact could look like, trying to overcome that initial adoption hump of, we're trying out the practice, it's having an impact on our systems. Our crops may have a challenge today, but then that becomes, overcome by year 3 or 5. But also being realistic about, there's going to be financial and technical support needs required to undertake this risk. And many farmers have not seen that yet. Or have not seen the support for it.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So you mentioned some very important points there. I would also like to bring in Anna here. But so what I can extract from this is that collecting farm data over the years, using these digital tools to do that, it is giving those insights as to how could RegenAg look like, which practices would work, what does it mean economically for the farmers as well. And we could perhaps speed up learning from all of this data in the next few years. But still, financing technical support is needed next to this. So coming to Anna, what's your experience, Anna, in this? How do you see that? How farm data and digital tools can support scaling RegenAg? What have you seen?
Mm-hmm. I think that you have to consider it just like the adoption journey on the farm. The maturity to collecting the data is also an adoption journey. Frankly, many farmers don't really get excited about somebody knocking on their door and asking for a bunch of sustainability data. It's one more thing that they have to do. It often comes in the form of really long questionnaires that they don't get any feedback to help support a decision down the line. A lot of growers don't even necessarily know which value chain partners their crops are going to once they leave the farm and get to an elevator. And so it's definitely a journey to design a digital tool that either captures some of the data that they already have on farm, or in cases where they don't have maybe the deep level of tech stack that a Bill has on a farm, to help them get that data told in a standardized way that both gives them some idea about how to tell their own sustainability story, but also provides value up the value chains to their partners and buyers and others. I really hear, Spencer, when you talk about building bigger partnerships and bringing multiple people in the value chain into the conversation, while making sure that the grower and the farmer has their perspective continue to be told. I think what bad looks like is a bunch of pushing down of standardized data requirements that don't harmonize at all with the reality of the time that growers have to dedicate to looking at data and understanding their data. These should be mutually beneficial exercises. And I maybe will make a bold statement, but if you're talking to a software company and they can't tell you that the last time they talked to a farmer was, you should probably question deeply some of the design choices maybe they are making on behalf of the data that they are trying to formulate or serve. So I'll leave it there for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Anna, and also to leading us to the last part of this conversation today, which is around the design question. So I'd like to discuss with you how much of what supply chains need actually, as in data, farm data, for their sustainability, RegenAg programs, or farmer support programs, how much of the data already exists on the farm. And as such, that data is already generating value for the farmer. And how can we then bridge that without asking the farmer to fill in data in 4 or 5 different systems for different partners and stakeholders across the supply chain? So that's what I'd like to discuss with you. But I think we do have time for a quick poll. So asking Amy to please pull up our poll. And yes, perfect. So what is the biggest obstacle to using farm data effectively in your supply chain? The data quality and consistency, farmers' trust and willingness to share also comes up, and interoperability is a very important point. It's spread. So most important obstacles are data quality and consistency, and farmers' trust in sharing that data, and perhaps also linking to transparency and communications from supply chain companies on how that data is exactly going to be used and how that actually brings value back to the farmer. So having that dialogue, and what Anna just mentioned now as well, about being on the farm and having that conversation, explaining why certain data is being collected and how that is being used is very important. Thank you. May I ask, Amy, can you pull back the poll just so that we can keep looking at the answers there? Yes. Spencer, may I ask you to react to this poll as well from United Sugar's perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the spread across all of these is more than real. I think you'll find each of these scenarios, depending on, what the system is and who you're talking to. I'll kind of just go through them one by one and kind of talk a little bit about them. Data quality and consistency, absolutely. Farmers are individual families. A lot of them are family run. they don't have, sustainability data system analyst experts a lot of the time. So trying to use digital systems to fill in the gaps or have one source of truth across multiple sources where you have to input this data is super important. Farmer trust and willingness to share, absolutely. Farmers understand that the data that is gathered on their farm is very valuable. And also, if somebody was using a satellite to scan my house and tell me about how my living room isn't clean, I would be pretty mad about it too. And that's how farmers feel when, there's a use of technology that they either don't understand or don't like or is intrusive, I think, or questions about, things that they don't understand the value behind or don't get a value from reporting and having to collect all that data. I think it doesn't breed trust with farmers. And there's been a lot of, I think as we continue to evolve, every farmer will have a story of how they were in a program that they really enjoyed and everyone was really engaged and they were happy to share their data. And then there was programs where it was very much like all give and no take. And, they didn't get value from it. And so when you're stretched as far as possible, trying to do 9 different jobs as a farmer, trying to keep your data together is one of those jobs. Lack of tools designed for the farmer. Yeah, I think I agree with that one. Designed for the farmer, I think is the most important part. I think a lot of tools are designed for people like me who use collected data to make reports, and it isn't necessarily as easy for the farmer. But there are a lot of tools that are made from the farmer's perspective that the whole design point is to make it easier for the farmer. Internal systems that can integrate it, absolutely. We use SAP internally, and we've done a lot of work to try to connect individual farm management systems into our internal system. And if we're lucky that we have that resource as a cooperative to be able to do that for our farmers, but individual farmers may not have those resources or be a part of a company or a cooperative where they may get those resources. Not involved in data collection. I think, it depends. I think a lot of farmers have their data, maybe not all in one place or all in one easy to analyze way. They may be trying to make their ROI on their farm work given the craziness of the market that we see today and maybe laser focused on that. May not be, totally into everything greenhouse gas and regenerative at the moment, but, I think most farmers have a wealth of data. It's just about how we can easily help them to gain value out of it.
Thanks a lot for sharing that perspective, Spencer. I just would like to go quickly to Anna and reflect on Cropwise. How is Cropwise supporting interoperability? This data sits in silos. How does that all talk to each other? Is connected to each other? How are insights derived from that?
We as a platform are more integrated today than we ever have been before. And we are at a place now where we can start to open up our ecosystem through a Cropwise open platform that provides APIs into systems like Spencer's SAP, for example, where partners might be interested in looking at deeper regional insights in a way that we couldn't even a year ago. So certainly we see the future of this agronomic and on-farm data as being a deep ecosystem that both supports that grower to have more decision support, more anticipatory decision support than they were able to previously. Where we can, we leverage partnerships with machinery manufacturers to be able to talk back and forth with machinery data. That's a very tricky and challenging, more challenging than you probably could anticipate, but also a source of deep information that helps prevent the grower from having to do double entry. So we're really taking an ecosystem approach to it and a view to it. And as AI technology continues to mature, we have easier ways to bring those disparate sets of data in a more harmonized manner to tell a better story and support better decisions.
It's great you brought up AI. We had some conversations around that as well. Probably everyone here on the call as well. AI is being picked up by your organizations as well as it is now. Gen AI especially also used at farms. As a closing, I'd just like to ask Bill, as we were having a conversation around AI, Bill, what do you see is the biggest opportunity in using AI to make all the farm data that sits in different places and different systems usable for you?
Yeah, I think this is really where we look at, on the farm, AI agents becoming a very, very valuable resource. So when we think about data sitting in silos, I have data in John Deere Ops Center. I have some data in Ag Leader SMS. I have data in Field View. I have data in Cropwise. I have data, I have financial data in a different platform. I have invoices from retailers, all of those kind of things. And for me to sit down and say, hey, we need this all in a very specific format and in one place, that might be weeks and weeks of work, depending on where the data is and how hard it is to access, and whether it's paper records, if we're going back historically, anything like that. But being able to get those, once we get everything digitally, even though that data can exist in silos, being able to use an AI agent to pull that together to kind of automate some of the reporting that we need for that is going to be a huge advantage, and really take the big lift off of the farmer. Because I think a big hurdle to participating in some of these regen ag practices and programs specifically is the amount of data reporting that is needed, and that a farmer's time is valuable, and looking at where they're going to spend that time, a lot of times it's not going to be in the office doing that reporting. It's going to be doing something that's very necessary out in the field. So being able to automate that with AI is going to be huge moving forward.
Thank you, Bill. I think AI itself deserves a separate 1-hour conversation. Handing back to Helen to close us.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Manpriet. So yeah, it's just for me to say thank you so much to Manpriet and to all the Syngenta team, and to all of our panelists, both for sharing your insights and for giving your time today. I think it's been a really valuable discussion, and we've really loved hearing all your perspectives. Thank you as well to everyone who joined us, who took part in the polls and submitted questions. It's been fantastic to see such strong engagement throughout the entire session. We really appreciate you being with us today, and yeah, thank you again. Thank you so much, and goodbye from wherever you're calling from.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.